Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful Friday, and I hope you enjoy the posted UBLearns video of Friday's recitation. Hopefully, this works for everybody. So we're gonna start off doing some comparison work. So on the screen now, I have two images, right? The two Davids, and one from the Renaissance, one from Baroque. Right, so we're looking at these two in comparison with the different art styles. So I'll give you a second to kind of look at those. Well, I guess you could pause it to look at those and I could keep talking. So the main differences I want you to notice are first, the emotional intensity, how they differ. So in Michelangelo's, right, the Renaissance David, he's very flat. There's some like strength, maybe arrogance going on here. There's confidence for sure, but there's not that like I said earlier, emotional intensity, right? This David is very idealistic. He's very stable, and you can kind of see him as very closed off or reserved, both emotionally and physically, right? With the statue. Versus Bernini's David, right? This would be the Baroque. There's a lot of intensity going on, both in his emotions, but also his posture, right? You can see in his face, he's got this real determined look. He's really focusing on the task at hand. There's some struggle going on, right? His movement is more fluid, right? He's actually preparing and getting in like a dynamic pose. He's ready to go. There's a lot more energy in this. He's not stoic like Michelangelo's David. And you could kind of see Bernini's David as a more realistic person, right? I won't say your everyday guy, but you're more likely to see someone who looks like Bernini's on the street than Michelangelo's. And that topic of emotional intensity and dynasty carry over to these next few comparisons. So I would like to reiterate, especially with this one, that these images I'm showing you today for the comparison may or may not be on the test, right? Like we've never seen this Renaissance painting before. This is a new one I just pulled to do this comparison. Not going to be on the test, right? So I would like to express that the images that I'm showing you aren't necessarily going to be on that test. Okay. So I'll give you a second to look at it here, but you can immediately see what I mean and the differences of emotional intensity in these two paintings. Right? So even though this is the Northern Renaissance we're looking at, you can still see that this stoicism, right? That stability. It's quite rigid or reserved. It's very held together, right? Whereas you look at Rubens, there's some more fluidity to it. There's more emotion, right? Not only in Jesus's face can we see that emotion, but also the people around him. And you'll notice immediately that the image I showed, the picture I pulled to show you the Rubens is kind of zoomed in. This is just the best quality I could find. So there's some people missing. You may have noticed that. but you can still see with the men in the background, particularly the one man on the left side of Jesus. Oh dear, you can see my hands. The left side of Jesus, and the man behind Jesus. And if you look back over towards the Northern Renaissance, there's some women on the bottom who are showing, um, their toil, their despair with the scene going on. But Jesus and most of the onlookers, they have it together, kind of. Like they look upset, but they don't have that dynastic emotional intensity that Rubens has. Rubens pulls you into those emotions, while this Renaissance piece is quite flat, right? Okay, moving on to some architecture now. So the first image here, the Duomo and St. Peter's Basilica on the bottom there. And looking at these two, you can see that intensity and that dynamic look that the Baroque really pulled on that the Renaissance didn't have quite yet. You may recall that the Duomo was one of the first, like, well completed domes. Like, they were architecturally just figuring this out. They were just learning how to master these techniques. So that room for fluidity wasn't there yet. Right? If you look at the basilica, it flows a lot, especially looking at those columns, you can really see the flow. And you can see some decoration with the Duomo, right? But then when you look at St. Peter's Basilica, the decorative pieces give you that emotional intensity that we've been talking about. This like pulled together energy that's it's kind of more in your face, right? It's showing you that there's just so much going on, right? They've not only mastered these architectural feats, but now they're going to show off exactly what they've learned. Okay, so these are the two Last Suppers. I believe we've looked at these in comparison in recitation prior, but here they are again. It's a wonderful use, right? A wonderful comparison of that intensity, right? So Da Vinci using that linear perspective. This is one of the first time linear perspective really comes into play. Leonardo da Vinci is starting to master this idea of linear perspective. There's some dynamic light to it, but it's still pretty flat. There's motion, some motion going on, but it's pretty stable. It's a it's a calm image. Then moving over to the Baroque side of the Last Supper, you have this incredibly dynamic piece. The brief moments of color, this complete shrouded darkness with just like bits of like light popping out. It's incredibly dynamic. There's not as much emotional intensity in the way of like, say, facial emotional expression, but their body language is giving over to that side of emotional intensity. And the darkness of the piece makes our causes, our eyes and our brains to really see um, um, the Baroque piece, right? That darkness, right, causes us to see the emotional intensity of it while it might not be there physically. Hey, this is the part of lecture where I give you a task to complete to mark your attendance for the day. So your task, short, maybe 3 sentences if you can, answer the question um in that frame. Tell me a comparison. It could be two we just talked about. If you want, you can choose two of your own. Whichever, as long as one is a Renaissance, one is Baroque. Just show me that you are understanding how to do a comparison, just so I can make sure you're on track for the test and that you watch this. Secondly, that you watch this. I didn't spend my time doing this for no reason. Okay, so you're gonna complete that later. I'm gonna move on with the lecture. So we're gonna go back and look at some more neoclassicism like we were doing in lecture on Monday. So here is both of the Horatii. 3 images that we're gonna look at. They're all by the same artist, but we're going to try and put these pieces in some political context. But we're also gonna do a small visual analysis, right? So one of the things here that I wanna point out is how is the colors, right? The light. This is what I would prefer to ask you guys. Let's do a visual analysis together. But one thing you may notice is that all the men are wearing a red garment, and all the women have a piece of blue on them. And it looks like, can you see my mouse? Um, she has the white dress with the blue headscarf, white headscarf, blue dress, and then over here she has the blue headdress, but there's some white peeking out. And a lot of art, um, this is a mother with her child, and a lot of the times, Mary is also pictured in the same way. Mary, the mother of Christ. That was my mother texting me. Um, and then, so what's amazing to me about this piece is the shadow down here, and all of the shadow, in the background and on these walls here. Just how the light is really highlighting, especially right here, the figures. And instead of highlighting, their face, it actually highlights more of their emotion than anything. So what they're committing to, what they're physically doing in this piece is more important than their physical identity. This piece is looking at a story of ancient Rome, but let's also think about it in the context of towards the end of the French Revolution, right? Because this painting was, started in 1796 and completed in 1799, which I believe is also the year the French Revolution ended. So you can see here in the emotion and the physical motion of the people within the painting that there is a lot of intensity going on. There's a lot of drama. there is turmoil and despair happening, right? And these are all emotions that people would have felt during the French Revolution as well, you know, placed between a very violent conflict, both, violent physically and violent mentally. So here we see a woman, and she is going in between on these two figures. One of an opposing soldier, and I believe this one is her husband. She has, a group of babies down here. There's one baby over here. Um, and there's a lot of desperation going on in between these two, right? So as this painting is depicting a civil conflict, um, the artist was also going through a very long-winded civil conflict. Um, Here in the death of Socrates. So here we have Socrates. We have, I believe this is Plato, and you can see here um, Socrates' followers. So Socrates in this painting, he was being put to death after being charged with impiety or the refusal of following a god or gods. So this painting is literally in the act of that, in the act of him being put to death. So right here, you see the cup of poison. I believe it's hemlock, the cup of poison. Um, this is one of Socrates' followers that's handing him the hemlock. So you can see, you know, look at this poor guy. He's really distraught about this. Even over here, this guy has his hand raised. He's pinching. Um, so this guy's crying. There's a lot of despair going on here. There's a huge emotional intensity going on in this piece as well. And then you have Plato, solemn. Solemn is the best word we'll have to describe Plato in this painting. Um, when I was looking for the photo to put up on Google, the photo for the slides, I saw this hilarious tweet about this painting. Literally just type in "death of Socrates" and you'll see it if you want to see it. It's silly. Don't look. But look at the shadows going on in this. Right, this wave of darkness that's like it looks like it's about to like encase Plato, and it's kind of coming off on that side as well. And then you have Socrates, who is encased in light, who is just willing and ready to go to his death, right? So if we're going to put this into political historical context, right, a lot, and I mean a lot, of people died for the French Revolutionary cause. Many people died at the state's hands. So you can see this as kind of um, David kind of coming to terms with that and showing that, even though the the state is forcing bodily harm, death onto their civilians, there is a cause people are fighting for and a cause willing to die for. And I think this piece really brings that all together, right? This idea of art holding political significance, but of course, right, you know, facing your own death standing up for something that you believe in, right? You might feel like Socrates does, feeling very vigilant. But then, he has all of his followers, people who spent lots of time with him, people who have loved him, that are going to sit there and watch someone they love, learn from, die, right? This anguish, when I really want to ask people if they have any questions. There was a pause button this entire time. I wish I knew that. It would have saved me a lot of iMovie editing time. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I will not be checking my email as often as I typically would be. So if it's urgent, email Professor Lily for urgent questions. Um, if not, we can always I'll be checking it infrequently, but that's better than not checking at all, so I will do my best. Um, yeah, any questions about the test, please forward over to your professor. Um, Make sure to do your attendance assignment, don't forget. I'm sorry this was a little shorter and a little lackluster than your normal presentation would be. To make up for that fact, I will be adding some links on UBLearns about neoclassicism, and maybe I'll find another comparison. I do already have a video on how to do a comparison up on UBLearns already under my recitation page. I believe it was, I want to say they compare two Davids, but I don't think it was the two I just did. I think it was Donatello's instead of Michelangelo's, but I don't remember because I haven't seen the video in a few weeks. But I will do that to make up for anything that I might have accidentally skipped over today, because as you can probably imagine, speaking to yourself instead of a large audience is awkward and difficult. So I'm going to try to make up for any missteps by posting some stuff on there that you can look at. Okay? So have a wonderful weekend. Good luck on your test, and I will see you after spring break. So have a wonderful spring break as well. And remember, you do have recitation in class next Friday. So do go to your usual room at your usual time for next Friday. Okay.